Hey, what's going on, guys? So back in the garage, I'm gonna make a video. Not going too into depth, but we are gonna be talking about CAN network. CAN stands for controller area network. So pretty much CAN, it's a two-wire system, and it allows for multiple modules to be communicating back and forth through two wires. So think about it the way I was taught. Think about it as a big house with an old school landline phone. There's 10 rooms in the house, and you get a call, and every single phone rings in the house. They're all receiving the same message, the same signal. They're all receiving the call. However, on CAN, a lot of times, especially with Hyundai, we deal with modules that get shorted internally and bring down the CAN network. So let's take, we're back on the 22 Santa Fe, that's my wife's car. So let's say a vehicle came in with a Christmas tree on the cluster, a bunch of warning lights. So you're going to do a full scan, every single module. So let's say that you did a full sweep of all the modules. The next thing that I do is I go through all the modules and identify which ones failed to communicate. You'll get a message on your scan tool that says failed communication. So let's say that your heads-up display didn't communicate, lane departure warning didn't communicate, MDPS didn't communicate, and your front radar didn't communicate. So now you identified which CAN network is down, which would be the CCAN. So then you would find your diagram for the CCAN and start checking all these modules. The way that I do it is I do it by, I know it's not easy, but I go down the line and I pick the easiest component to get to. So for example, the front radar is underneath the car in the front bumper. So I would unplug the front radar and then do another scan and see if now I could communicate with all these modules except the front radar. If I do, then I know that my issue is inside of the front radar. So I go down the line. Like I said, I pick the easiest ones and start there. And then there's also joint connectors. There's a bunch of joint connectors. Usually they're located in pretty jacked up places. JF03 is left side quarter panel. So that one you might be able to peek at through by pulling back the weather strip just to look at it. But going back to CAN and how it works. So on a CAN network, you do have two terminating resistors. So you have 120 ohms resistor in one module, and then a secondary in another module. So a terminating resistor pretty much is to absorb noise and terminate the load at each end. So if you were to test here MF11, pin 48 and 49 cross each other, you should receive 60 ohms of resistance. Because 120 ohm and 120 ohm, you're supposed to get 60. Say you measured it here at pin 48 and 49 and you found 120 ohms. So either this one of these resistors is bad or there's a broken wire to the resistor. So you should equal 60 ohms when checking the resistance across CAN high and CAN low. And then CAN, usually CAN high and CAN low equal roughly 5 volts together. So for example, if you measure CAN high and it's 2.8 volts, your CAN low should be around 2.2 volts. So we do see a lot of control modules causing the issue. So that's the way that I chase the CAN issue, is I start unplugging modules and then rescanning the vehicle. Once you gain communication to the modules you identified previously that weren't communicating, then you know that that module is bringing down the CAN network. And then these vehicles have a bunch of different CAN systems. So you have CCAN, DCAN, PCAN, body CAN, ICAN, MCAN, so that's the way that I chase CAN issues. I know there's different ways to go about it, but for sure you need to do you need to be checking your CAN voltages. I have seen in the past as well joint connector issues like a backed out pin, but usually that doesn't bring down the complete CAN network. Usually that's a shorted line. But if you had like a SRS module that says failed communication, obviously you're going to check your module power and ground. And then if that test is good, and the next thing to do would be to check your CAN and say you went to pin 36, which is your CAN high, and you have 2.8 volts, and then you go to your CAN low, and then you have 0 volts. So then you would need to dig into the joint connector, JMO4, which is located, it's in the dash, behind the dash. But I have seen where the pin is backed out, so it's not making contact with the joint connector. And then a joint connector is pretty much, so this one's 29 pins. So here you can see you have your CAN high and your CAN low. And then they go to, it's just like, say 29 pins, right? So you're just joining all those pins to CAN high and CAN low. So think about it that way. What else? I think I have some notes as things that I've seen. Let me see. Yeah, so CAN high to CAN low, you're measuring resistance here. We'll pick here pin 9 and 8. You should have 60 ohms of resistance. If you have 120, then either there's a bad terminating resistor or a bad wire going to it, so it's not in the circuit. CAN high and CAN low voltages being the same, if you're measuring them here, possibility of them being shorted together. So if that was the case and that was your suspicion, you would unplug the module and then the joint connector for those 2 pins, and then check resistance between pin 8 and 9. They should be open, they should not be touching. If you have a short to ground in one of the CAN wires, your voltage might be 0. And then another thing to check is CAN high and CAN low. You should not have any resistance to ground. If you do, then that wire is shorted, so it should read OL. So yeah, that's just a quick little explanation of what CAN is and how I go about diagnosing it. I know there's other people have different ways of going about it, but that's the way I was taught a long time ago. And I mean, it takes some work and some elbow grease to access these modules, but I mean, CAN diagnosis sucks anyways. So hopefully this helps you guys. I know there's some people following that work for Hyundai or other dealers as well. And I learned it from the Hyundai instructor back in the day, probably in 2011. So I've been using it since. I'm still with Hyundai, and yeah, you're gonna have to pull dashboards apart and do stuff like that. But everybody knows that CAN diagnosis sucks. So like your IBU, that's located in the dash. And keep in mind that Hyundai sucks at paying us for this type of stuff. They don't have any, at best you'll get an hour for being all over the car, all over the interior. So just keep that in mind. So if you're gonna do it the way I do it, start pulling modules, unplugging modules. Pick what's easiest first before you start tearing apart the dashboard and stuff. Electric oil pump is in the engine bay. Passenger occupant detection sensor is under the passenger seat. TCM is in the engine bay. ESC modules in the engine bay. Shift control unit is easy. So pick your easiest ones first. Unplug it, rescan the vehicle. If you gain communication with everything but that module you unplugged, then that module is your culprit. Before replacing the module, also go ahead and check your voltages and everything you need to check for your CAN before deeming that it's bad. But more than likely, it's a issue inside of the module. Hope this video helps you guys out a little bit. Let me know if you guys want to see anything in particular. Thank you guys, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.